Da-da, da-da-da. My name is Derek Hart. This is my absolute very first yoga video ever published on YouTube. My plan here is to help people learn about their bodies, what to do about simple aches and pains, learning anatomy, yoga, massage, basically what I've learned. So, the production quality of this video is rather low. I haven't invested anything into lighting, into sound editing, writing a script. This is really off the cuff for my brother Brian, but perhaps like him, you have issues here and there that bother you, that you'd like to help understand how to resolve in your own body. So, me and Mr. Thrifty here, and in the first steps of what will be the journey of my entire career, are producing our very first video. So from here on out, I'm pretty much just speaking to my brother Brian with what he knows about this or that in the body. But please, if you have any neck shoulder issues, that one knot right there, that's essentially what this video is about. So without further ado, I'm just going to kind of start going into it. If it turns into 20 minutes of rambling, then thank you for sticking it through. But once again, this is my first go around. I'm tired of not doing work because I don't have everything perfectly, everything the way I need it. So rather than waiting for me to look better or feel better or be in just the right mood, here I am, ready to give to the world without fear, without hesitation. So once again, let's begin. My brother recently asked me, he's having some neck and shoulder issues right around up in here. This is an incredibly common spot. In my 8 years as a massage therapist, this is the #1 spot. I call it my bread and butter spot because it makes up most of my paycheck. But not to minimalize it, this is something that is so common that we quickly, as massage therapists, as yoga teachers, start to learn the language of what to do about it. And this is fundamental to what I'm here to do, is to help you learn. There are ways to push the buttons of our body to precipitate reactions that build muscle, that help change and shape how our organs react, and therefore there are also buttons in our body that we can press to instigate healing reactions, to essentially lean on those spots. In Ayurvedic traditions, they call them nadis or energy channels. In traditional Chinese medicine, perhaps pressure points. You may have heard acupuncture, acupressure. These are points where nerves and blood vessels interact in a very sensitive way that can have a powerful effect on our endocrine system, the hormone balance of our body, on the way that our nerves and therefore muscles and reflex reactions interact. And through the style of Yin Yoga, which I'll be going over just a little bit of here today, you can learn how to shape your myofascial tissue and its interaction with our skeletal muscular system and our muscular system. And so the basics of where this neck and shoulder pain come from. We commonly speak of knots in our body. Knots professionally are called adhesions because they refer to layers of myofascial tissue, which is this gooey, sticky, thixotropic substance, that layers that kind of get gummed up and stuck together. Think of any material like jerky or gum. When it starts to get dehydrated, it picks up this tackiness. Our myofascial tissue with thixotropic, meaning it thins or responds to agitation, which comes through either pressure or heat. Pressure and heat thin the myofascial tissue, which allows everything to lubricate. Myofascial tissue, like most things in the body, is mostly made up of water. Largely this water and protein base for our myofascial tissue, and then 3 very important, I believe, proteins, but they may be specifically something else. So forgive some of my non-medical expertise, but these 3 basic elements are reticulum, elastin, and collagen. Collagen definitely is a protein, but these 3 make up the fibrous nature, like cell walls, like plant leaves. They often or they have a lot to do with the structure of our body, the housing of our muscle tissue, if that's a way you'd like to think about it. And so yin stretches can do quite a lot to have an effect on the myofascial tissue, and also therefore a lot to do with the walls of what our muscle tissue lives inside of. And so the basics of some of where this comes from, we can think of a few muscles. So I'm going to bring my little skeletal friend, Mr. Thrifty, a little closer to the camera here, and hopefully I have my angles right and all of that. Again, low production value. Thank you for sticking with it, but the information, I promise, will be very worth it. So right here, as you can see, in an anatomical skeleton, and Mr. Thrifty's a little bit of a budget thing, but so it doesn't rotate perfectly in every way, but you can see that the humerus joint connects in through the shoulder blade, and you can see our clavicle or collarbone right there, and then also, of course, all of our ribs. And the way that it connects in the back can be rather revealing, that our shoulder blades actually don't attach bone on bone to any of this. The shoulder blade is meant to slide around as we move our ribs, as we flex and change direction. The shoulder blade completely, or the scapula completely, comes with it. The joint connection is one singular connection right here. The clavicular joint meeting with the acromion process, the acromioclavicular joint. And then we have this little nub that comes around in the bottom, and actually perhaps this Mr. Thrifty isn't perfectly demonstrated, but we have a little nub called the coracoid process. And the reason this is very important, this little nub rolls underneath and has three little muscular attachments, three strings of attachment, the pectoralis minor, rather than the pectoralis major, covering this large area which wraps around to kind of the outside top and all across the top of the collarbone. The pec minor has a very specific job and a very specific attachment. Three little strands of muscle that connect to these three ribs, and when they are stretched away in a specific fashion, it allows a lot more release. So we have a society that is very dominant on front-forward arm action. Very capitalist way to think about it, if you want to put that in there. But this front-forward action, also with the way we use our arms for computers, for video games, or even just when we're tired at the end of the day, the pectoralis minor can start to get shorter and shorter and shorter. And what is going to happen? Naturally, the collarbone is going to slide up and over. The myofascial tissue, the muscle relationship to the bone, is all going to start to shift. Myofascial tissue, if you ever hear those old sayings, don't do that, your face will stick that way. Myofascial tissue brings some credit to that thought. And so the more we do in action, the more our myofascial tissue, our structural tissue, kind of just starts to shift that way slowly. The fibers become enmeshed and start to learn in an indirect way what we're trying to get from our body. The myofascial tissue, incredibly indirect. It's not receiving instructions from your nerves. It's not even directly receiving instructions from your muscle tissue. It basically just slowly shifts and shapes over time to do whatever it is that you are putting your skeleton through, and to hold that structure in relation to how our muscles act. And so as the shoulder starts to slip up over time, these muscles are naturally going to pick up a predominance of activity. The back of the trapezius muscle getting deep, meaning closer down to the joints. You have muscles like our rhomboid minor. It's this little strip that comes across and attaches, as opposed to the major, which makes up most of the interaction between the shoulder blade and the vertebra, or in the ribs and all of this. And so we tend to get a lot of bunching up. The more the pectoralis minor starts to shorten, bringing the humerus forward and down, it's also going to draw up the shoulder blade up and over, and eventually, without realizing it, we start to exist this way. This is what myofascial does. It helps hold us in place in the way that your body is trying to be used. And so, when we stretch out and open, this sense of opening and then away from is going to really help to start teach the myofascial tissue, the nerves, that you like to be in this open position. Part of what happens is a stretch, in this yin posture that I will once again get to very shortly. And then part of it is also the compression that happens back there. So let's introduce that topic. Every yin style of stretch has a stretching element on one side and a compressive element on the other side of the bone. And so always being mindful of both of these qualities, that when we're in a yin posture, that we're not necessarily trying to accentuate the stretch aspect, which happens on one side of the body, any more than we're trying to accentuate or provoke the compressive element, which can happen on the other side of the body. And this style of stretching is largely about letting go. In fact, I shouldn't even call it stretching anymore. At this point, I should say this style of yoga, because the word stretch has its own connotations, right? We think stretch, we think pull, elongate, and part of that is very useful in what we're trying to visualize and achieve in our muscles, but a lot of stretching is just the opposite of working out. In every way you have to exert yourself and be conscious and put the effort in. Yin postures are largely about the exact opposite of that. Let go. Where is my mind trying to do work? Let it take the time off. Do one simple task and we'll get there, but that is focus on the breath. And so, without further ado, as I say again, if I have a script, I'll make sure I stop saying that so much. Let's get into this yin posture. And then after that, I'm going to go into a few simple shoulder stretches, stretches you can do yourself at home, including a few stretches for the forearms and wrists, and why this helps the entire shoulder complex. And one last thing I meant to introduce in this yin stretch is that Mr. Thrifty here, because he has a very fixed shoulder blade, can't quite show us this action as well. But it's important to remember that as the arm comes forward, as we reach forward, the collarbone comes with it. The shoulder girdle has this unique property in that movement doesn't just stop here, that we can actually come forward a little bit. And that's when you're going to feel maybe perhaps the bottom attachment of your pectoralis major and some of the, I believe it's called protraction, of the arm going forward, and the catch right up in here of the pectoralis minor. And so as this comes forward and as you get into this yin posture for your shoulder, remember that the release starts here at the sternum. So rather than trying to just force the arm back, which Mr. Thrifty can do quite well, remember that that this joint is not meant to go back very far. And so the release actually comes in the midline, in the very center, from the sternum, from the spine itself. And then everything else is very incidental. Visualizing and understanding that the release starts from the heart outward can be key to making sure that this isn't a posture in which you exacerbate joint shoulder pain at the rotator cuff itself. Another important aspect is to understand the rotation of the humerus right here and how it affects things. But it's easier to show that in the human body than it is with Mr. Thrifty here. So the positioning of the hand can be quite important. You know that if you're trying to bring this back with your hand pointed away, or what would be called pronation, it's going to catch quite a lot back here. It automatically creates compression in the back of the deltoids, which helps restrict movement to keep us from causing pain in the nerves. And so keeping the palm open or supinated is going to help release the musculature back there, because this anatomical position is where the muscles stay open through the movement, and this flip of the hand will naturally create some bone-to-joint compression and squeezing blood vessels, nerves, in a way that's not necessarily something we need to do to get the results. So I'm going to take a quick jump over, do a camera angle, but then from here on I'm going to describe the yin posture I keep talking about. Do, do, do. Thanks, Boobers. Our little Benny Boobers back there. So, to start this posture, quite simple. You come all the way down to the ground, belly down. The first movement, and pardon me if the microphone fuzzes and such against the ground, this is part of my learning curve, my learning experiences, but the arms come out into a letter T, palm down, and then from here, as you can see, my legs are straight out behind me. The first move is going to be kind of an all-in-one, in which you roll onto the side of your left hip. This is to stretch out or compress or focus the yin energies, or however you think of it, into the left side. And so from face down, you roll onto the side of your left hip. At the same time, draw your right hand in and allow your left ear to relax onto the ground. Now, I naturally did something as I rolled onto my left hip. I bring my foot down and place it gently on the ground. If you're a little bit less flexible, feel free to leave your right leg long and straight and allow it to be a gentle, like a big open pair of scissors. If you like, you can also bend your left knee and put your right foot anywhere you please. You can feel how the positioning of your right foot, where you plant it on the ground or leave it far behind you, gently changes the compression in your upper spine, behind the shoulder blades and all of that. Now, from this position, relaxing your head on the ground, a gentle kickstand for your right hand. Your left hand is down, palm down toward the earth. From this position, you just stay. Take a nice deep breath. Allow your eyes to close. Begin to focus your mind on your breath. Your breath is the vehicle of all change in your body, the prime catalyst to change yang to yin, yin to yang. Focusing your mind on your breath is paramount for some very good reasons. Your mind will naturally become focused on the sensation in the front of your left shoulder. But you may also gently be aware of the compression between what is called the medial angle of the scapula, the left shoulder there. Compression between that and all of the muscle layers between your ribs, your spine, the costal joints where your ribs fit into the vertebrae. Come back to your breath. Simply be aware what has changed already. Now, these yin postures are meant to be held, or, if there's any holding going on, let go. These yin postures are meant to be sustained for anywhere between 2 and 10 minutes. Typically 5 to 7 is my target range, so one song, 2 songs can do that. And after 2 or 5 or 7 or 10 minutes, when you're ready to safely come out, keep in mind that the hand may have fallen asleep. Don't be afraid of that. But a sharp physical pinch is always to be avoided. But you come to your breath and it smooths out. So, when you're ready, give your left fingers a gentle wiggle. And go ahead and flip your palm over. Slowly bring your left hand down to your side. Just a safe way to come on out. Roll down to your chest. And when you're ready, just roll onto your back. If you like, a fantastic counter pose. Your feet come apart about a foot or two. Maybe turn your toes, pigeon toe in a little bit, or duck toe in. This allows the femur to rotate, allows your knees to just kind of fall in toward each other, whether they touch or not. And if you like, cross your arms. Or maybe for you it feels better to have the left on bottom, right on top. In every yin posture, it's important to take this rebound posture. Just a minute or so. The spine is fully supported, allowed to come back to neutral and relax. Whatever joint we put pressure on is allowed to come to a more open, neutral place. So hands on the hips, hands open to the sky, arms crossed across the chest, whatever it may be. So, 2 to 10 minutes, and then 1 minute or so of rebound, and then do the other side. Yin takes a while, but the healing effects are incredibly deep. So hopefully I haven't bored you to tears too much, but I'm going to reset. And as quick as I can, just a couple shoulder stretches. So one of them, you find a door jamb, call it the door jamb stretch. With your hand, you grab it, and you want to come really no higher than shoulder height. Anything above that, and the shoulder starts to pinch right here at the joint, and so the shoulder blade has to lift up and slide up. So it's much easier if you're going to come above the shoulder to start to rotate the palm open. But that changes what muscle we're stretching, and so therefore really just keep it shoulder height or slightly lower and find a door jamb and enjoy stretching out that way. That'll stretch out some of the front here. A simple way to do the back, the posterior deltoids, the latissimus dorsi, all these fun little guys in here. You just let your forearm cross over the front. Enjoy. Make it a little bit active if you like. This isn't necessarily a yin posture. So if you pull this way, or if you kind of gently press your humerus here against the forearm, 10 to 15 breaths. When I'm stretching, I always like to recommend breaths rather than time, because when we breathe, we really connect. You connect to the moment, you feel what's going on. And if you're watching the clock, your mind is externalizing, taking focus away from all the beautiful things that are changing. A third shoulder stretch that is absolutely one of my favorites. I call it the ski jump stretch. It helps to target the anterior deltoid and the pectoralis minor. And so your thumb, just like ski jumping, is down. You can even do thumbs up. Bring it all the way down. And you come straight back. Eventually you have to tuck your thumb because you're going to put it on a countertop or a table. Or if you're standing up, a kitchen counter can work quite well. Now, the more straight back you're allowed to bring it, the more that's going to target this focus. But generally speaking, most people, it comes out just a little bit. So see what you can do to enjoy letting it go straight back, even if it brings your sternum back a little. But thumb down against the table. And when you're ready, you just gently let yourself lean. It doesn't take much to feel quite a lot of sensation. Once again, 10 to 15 breaths, or 5 to 10 breaths. If that's all you have time for, all you want to make time for, 5 deep breaths does a massive amount more than nothing, because I don't have time to stretch. These kind of things we say to ourselves. So, we have 3 fantastic ways to open up the rotator cuff, indirectly affecting some of what happens around the vertebrae itself. And so 1, door jam stretch. 2, across the front. And 3, back ski jumper. And generally speaking, it's always a good idea to do both sides. We do want to achieve balance in our lives in general. Nothing is ever perfect left to right. There may be slight differences, but the more we do both of them, the more our body progresses together and fully as a system. 3 very simple stretches for the forearms and the thumb. So 1 targets our flexors, the inside here. They do quite a lot of work all day when we're lifting things. Even more work, especially if we're playing video games or if we're hunched over a computer. Even more work comes to our extensors, the back of the forearm. So these guys need to be stretched out all the time, as much as you like, but in a balanced proportional way to how much you're using them. So first, stretching out the extensors. You take this ridge of knuckles, the inside ridge of knuckles, right there. And so you come down to the ground, and you've essentially got the knuckles to knuckles, and you have a few pivot points, one at the wrist, one at the knuckles, and then this action in this hand. And so from there, you can get all you need. Coming straight down, it just gives you the most length, because if we're just kind of doing right like this, it doesn't quite open up the muscle as well. So you can gently press, but really a little goes a long way. And so from here, if you want to enhance the stretch, you just gently try and make a fist with the left hand. Again, won't take much. You're not going to be able to close it all the way down in this stretch position. But the effort of gently squeezing the fingers in will activate the antagonist muscle, allowing this to elongate much more comfortably. And it actually assists in what is going on, and it's doing some proprioceptive reconditioning or reteaching your brain, your reflexes. What do you feel like? What do you want to feel like when you activate a muscle that is antagonist to what you're trying to stretch? Sometimes called PNF stretching, or perhaps active release therapy. I may be wrong about that, so let's move on. But doing this kind of stretching where you activate the muscle gently can be very efficient. So 10 to 15 breaths, gently release, move it around a little if you like. If that was uncomfortable, if you felt a gentle sort of tug or burning, then perhaps you're doing it right. Not here to cause ourselves pain, ever. to get our flexors to stretch this guy out, I like to make a James Bond and put her right there. So these two are going to hook right around here. These two fingers are to help just gently keep the thumb supported and back. So I'm using this edge of my hand to press the knuckles down lightly, and this thumb is, well, in the way. And from there, this position, you just gently hold. It's going to give you one heck of a stretch. And the more you integrate these fingers, you can also get something here. But beware, this is not a joint that is necessarily meant to be pushed on backwards this way. So the most action is just gently pushing down with this blade edge of my palm to allow it to come down. This creates a wonderful stretch. You'll probably feel it somewhere in here, but we never need to force stretching. Like drinking water, we don't need to drown ourselves one day a week. It is far better to slowly sip water multiple times a day. And in the same way, it is far more efficient to find 5 seconds, 15 breaths, to stretch here and there. Once a day, twice a day, once every single day for 5 days is going to give you some fantastic results. If it felt like a little bit of a stretch, feel free to loosen it up. So that's 1, 2, and the third, very simple. We have 2 very large tendons here that connect to the thumb, the pollicis tendons. They create that little dip, which used to be called the anatomical snuff box. But essentially what you're doing is curl your thumb peacefully, lightly. You don't have to jam it down in there, but curl your thumb in between your fingers. Come straight out in front of you. This is to create a good long line through the muscles involved, and then gently dip down. It's as simple as that. This is incredibly useful. The opposable thumbs are one of humanity's greatest birthrights, but we must learn how to take care of it to keep the nerves healthy, to keep the blood vessels healthy and happy, and in balance with the rest of our body. So you can relax a little, or you can go straight out in front. The way that you make it a little bit of that PNF style stretching is if you imagine you're trying to pull your thumb out. It's not going to go very far because your fingers are holding on to it, but you feel the opposing action. And so as you try to gently pull your thumb out, it doesn't move much at all, but it's going to shorten the tendons here. It's going to activate some antagonist muscles and generally make the stretch much more comfortable. And then breathe 10 to 15 seconds. So super quick, wonderful, easy. Curl the thumb, grab it, forward, gently tip down, start to activate the thumb, so to speak, 10 to 15 breaths. If you want to, this is a wonderful one to target. You can gently turn your finger down or turn it open just a little, but after a while we're starting to get back into this, so just a little bit of variance in degree. So we've learned some really great stretches. One, I call the Mac Daddy, the Yin shoulder complex posture. Maybe has some other great names that other people have given it. 3 stretches for the rotator cuff area. Bam, bam, bam. And then also 3 fantastic stretches for the forearms and wrist. The flexors, the extensors, and the pollicis tendons, or the thumb, if you want to just simply call it that. So I hope these stretches are incredibly useful. All of these are meant to be done gently, in a sort of pain-free, but if you know there's that sweet ache, that good ache, perhaps you're doing it just right. As in all things in yoga, make sure you're coming to your breath. If your breath is panicked, it means your body is not liking this. If your mind is